Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about Buddhist ethics, that what is the ethical claim of Buddhism and what is Buddhism all about. It is going to be more in the form of a story when we find the what is it that led into Buddhism as both a philosophy and a religion, and the code of conduct and the ethics that it brings about. So, many of us may be familiar with the story of Buddha, but for those who are not, let me briefly recapitulate what is the story of Gautam Buddha or Siddhartha. Now, Siddhartha was a prince born in the foothills of the Himalayas in 563 BC. And now, Prince Siddhartha was of royal descent. He was the son of a king, and legend had it at that time that when the king was blessed with a son, that the son would be either a great ruler or a great saint. So, the king, naturally being interested in wanting his son to be his successor, did not want the son or Siddhartha to become a saint and wanted him to become rather a great ruler. So, the king insulated the young prince from any visions or any aspects of society which would perhaps trigger a saintly pursuit. So, he kept him comfortably in the palace and with a lot of comforts, insulated from the world out there. Well, Siddhartha on one of his sojourns saw human societies, and one might call it destiny, or one might not choose to call it destiny, but well, Siddhartha did take a look at human life as it is being lived in the world out there outside his palace, and that is where that started to set him to think that, well, what is the he saw the sights of a aged man, of a old man sick, and a dead body, a person being born. Now, this caused him disillusionment. Now, this is what perhaps is the most popular notion of Buddhism, that, well, which claims that, well, life is full of suffering, that life is full of suffering, and this is perhaps one of the crucial comments or crucial claims that is popular about Buddhist ethics. But let us look at it this way, that what does Buddha mean that, well, life is suffering? But anyway, let me continue his story. Now, this young prince, Siddhartha as he was known then, saw these sights of old age, disease, sickness, and birth and death. So, and then he thought that, well, why is there so much of suffering? And what he could see all around was a lot of suffering, that people were suffering, that even happiness and joy that we see is only intermediary between sufferings. So, that made Gautam Buddha, made Prince Siddhartha go out in search of what is it that can give one escape from suffering. So, he left his palace, and a father whose heart was broken, and he went out into the forests, as it was the practice then, to dwell on what could be the reason for this suffering, and what could be and how could a liberation for the same be attained. After 6 years of rigorous hard penance and an ascetic life, Prince Siddhartha was still nowhere close to finding a solution. So then he wanted he discarded the ascetic life and took the middle path of leading an ascetic life, but not with the rigor that he was living up to then. Then he had this what is regarded as the as enlightenment in the Buddhist history, is that when sitting below a tree, Prince Siddhartha had an enlightenment and could form his philosophy about life, and since then he was known as the Buddha or the Gautam Buddha. Now, and since then he's propagated, or he's counseled the people around there, and what then thereof what came to be known as Buddhism, both as a religion and philosophy. It is both a religion and philosophy because it also talks about the fundamental questions. It debates, delves and reasons into giving its justifications. It is also a religion because it provides a code of conduct, a way of living, a way of conducting one's life, a set of guidelines. So, Buddhism is both a philosophy and a religion, just like Jainism and Hinduism. So, now Buddhism, we see that, well, this is briefly the history of the journey of Prince Siddhartha from an opulent princely childhood to an ascetic middle age to a enlightened soul. Now, let us also know the historical background that, well, Buddhism was at a time 5 centuries before Christ, and it is then when Hinduism was very popular, but it had become very ritualistic. The caste system was present, and that Buddhism arose as a, perhaps many scholars see it as a reaction to the hardcore Hinduism prevailing there, and it became wildly popular, and Buddhism even spread to various far East Asian countries, including Burma, Japan, Tibet and other nations around, and it was quite popular. So, this having the placed the trajectory of Buddhism, now let us come back to what Buddha talks about. Now, whether this fundamental claim that we have written, that life is full of suffering, now this is where we need to spend some time, that whether life is full of suffering, and is it a pessimistic reading? Life is full of suffering. Now, is this a pessimistic reading? But before we go into analyzing this, let us try to understand why the Buddhists or Buddha made such a claim. Now, Buddha made such a claim because, well, he observed that, well, whatever and however we lead life through whichever stages, the only thing inevitable is suffering, because even the moments of happiness or pleasure that we have is because of placed between periods of suffering, that we have disease, that we have death, that we have old age, that we have decay, that we have impermanence, that we have things changing. That is what makes something, that is what makes life so full of suffering according to Buddhist. It will perhaps not be a pessimistic reading as much as he would like to call it a factual statement of affair, that, well, the entire futility of human existence or human predicament, as it is said, that we labor hard and we achieve and we toil and we relish it, but then it is all transitory, it gets away. So, imagine what is happening in Prince Siddhartha's mind. Well, he is born in a very comfortable situation, set to rule, and he could have a life full of pleasures or happiness, and morally justified happiness, not a life of rampant pleasure. Yet, what is it that disturbs him? That disturbs him is that, well, that we are even the prince is not immune to disease, not immune to decay, not immune to death, not immune to having things go away. In short, not immune to impermanence. So, wherever we find that, let us transpose it to today's life, like if we are tending, we tend to believe that, well, perhaps that was true on that time. Well, it is perhaps not so. If you just look at around us, that whatever our pursuits are, we are still a part of the simple yet profound observation that there is a birth, a growth, middle stage of equilibrium, and then there is a decay and death. That death is a part of life, that death is an inevitable part of life, is too obvious for us to perhaps strike us in our day to day living. But no matter what, whatever we wish, we desire, we achieve, our loves, our triumphs, our achievements are still susceptible to the death of the agent, to the decay of the agent, to change. So, at a more deeper and more fundamental level, what is an happiness? And happiness, looking for a happiness that lasts forever. Now, many religious texts talk about eternality, that eternal happiness, eternal bliss. What is it that when we are looking for eternal? Why eternal? Why eternity is revered in so many texts? Because eternity is a liberation from impermanence, from change, from unhappiness, from suffering. So, when we say, when the Buddhists say that, well, life is full of suffering, well, Buddha is trying to say that no matter for what all our achievements are, we still have suffering as a part of it, because our achievements are just an intermediary between phases of suffering. So, is this a pessimistic reading? I would leave that on to the audience to decide, leave it open ended. Let me look to explore another perspective. The second perspective that I would like to explore is, what is the nature of happiness or satisfaction? Now, for many of us who would like to argue, there is a one could explore this angle that, well, when the Buddha says that life is full of suffering, perhaps he has not got his understanding of the notion of happiness and human life as right. Why do I say so? Now, this claim would claim that, well, happiness exists only because unhappiness exists. Sorrow is necessary for joy. So, this school of philosophy, which could be regarded as the existentialists, or those who believe that life has to be lived, that the human predicament is in oscillating between the two extremes. Between joy and sorrow, and this is what makes life meaningful. Okay. Now, what is this point? Now, we have a very popular understanding of the human spirit or the human predicament of existence, that well, we have happiness only because we have unhappiness, we have sorrow. So, we need the darker shades to realize the lighter shades. So, there is nothing to worry or gloom about suffering, but rather look at it as a necessary condition for us to experience joy. Now, Buddha is against, would call this also suffering. So, a life of activity, a life of defeats and triumphs, of overcoming odds, where the human spirit, so to say, vibrates energetically as a part of a meaningful life, is also not what convinces Buddha as the good life, because as a ruler, what is regarded in Indian philosophy as a Rajasic life. A ruler would have a very Rajasic life and would have all the pleasures or all the triumphs, tribulations and achievements that human existence presents. So, it is a life where one has to struggle, fight, win, lose, and that is what makes a game worth playing. So, yes, the existentialist would claim that, well, thank God we have sorrow, because we have sorrow, so we can struggle to alleviate it, and then we have happiness. But this would be the existentialist reading of sorrow, that sorrow as a necessary darker shade to bring about, bring into focus the lighter shade. So, sorrow is a necessary part of human existence, and how we can get rid of it should not matter to us, rather we should try to maximize our happiness possible. Well, the Buddha is still not convinced. The Buddha's claim, or Siddhartha, looks for eternity, looks for permanence, looks for happiness or satisfaction that is eternal, looks for this escape from what he regards as the cycle of ignorance, pain, suffering, pleasure, and again binding. So, throughout Indian philosophy and Indian ethics, an esoteric strain is seen, which many have critiqued as an escapist strain, but for many could also see it as a desire to see something which is liberating, from mundane human existence, as an metaphysical or ontological new state. But anyway, so we see that, well, when Buddha claims that life is full of suffering, well, he has his justification. He is making a claim that, well, no matter what we do, where we are placed, human life essentially has suffering, and that because we may love gives us happiness, but we lose, and we inevitably have to lose, gives us sadness. So, it is perhaps a part of human nature to be a part of human nature to suffer, and that is what gives us meaning. But Buddha does not agree with that. He wants an escape from suffering, that, well, life is full of suffering, and what is the way out? He refuses to reconcile with the claim that, well, suffering is what makes life meaningful. He thinks that life has to have something more, which makes it eternal, which gives him the liberation from impermanence. We will talk about impermanence in some time. Well, that there is suffering. Now, this comes out to be the first of the four noble truths as popularly regarded. So, the first noble truth is that life is full of suffering and existence is dukkha as it is regarded. Now, what is the meaning of dukkha? Dukkha would mean well, sorrow in the psychological sense, but at a deeper sense it would mean impermanence. And this impermanence is the cause of all suffering. Well, look at it this way. Now, when Buddha puts his points out to suffering, he is making a claim that, well, what is suffering? What claim is he making? Well, there is suffering, and where does suffering come? He does not discount the pleasures and the joys we receive, but what he calls as suffering, because on the larger scale he sees that these pleasures and these joys are just a facade or a transitory, a temporary benefit. It is like this, if I may be permitted to make a naive analogy. We are sitting in a train or a plane which is about to crash, and in that, but it is about to crash in, say, a long time, and we have no escape from the train, but right in the train we have a lot of goodies. We have good books to read, we have good people to interact with, we have good food to eat, and we have a comfortable life to lead. So, inevitably the train is going to crash. Now, there are various ways of how people would make peace in such a situation, that, well, when death becomes imminent, people have different philosophies, but in such a situation there could be a person who would say that, well, death is imminent and the crash is imminent, but I can still make good of my whatever time I have on this train. Someone could say that, well, if death is imminent, then all these things, all these goodies and all these comforts that we have around ourselves does not matter. That is what Buddhism talks about, that when death is imminent, where decay is imminent and where loss is imminent, it does not matter that we have whatever highs of joy and pleasure. So, what is this death, or what is this change? Not necessarily the human death, it is the whole abstracted notion of impermanence, that we do not have permanence. Impermanence is a fact of life, but to begin with any philosophical thinking, one does not have to regard facts and absolute. It is the liberation from the factual domain that is the beginning of philosophical thinking, that you are no more enamored or captured with how things are, but how things could be. So, from that necessarily requires you to be liberated from how things are. So, coming back now, I see that Buddha making this claim, like the person sitting in the train, that, well, when the crash is imminent, I would like to seek something that would make whatever happiness I can enjoy as eternal, and if whatever happiness I can enjoy is not eternal, then it is really not happiness, it is suffering in the guise of happiness. So, impermanence is what is known as dukkha, impermanence is what is known as suffering. So, as long as things are impermanent, it is a the final calculation is that it is a part of dukkha. So, the first noble truth that Buddha proposed was that life is full of suffering, that existence, human existence is dukkha, and dukkha is to be understood as anitya or impermanence. Impermanence is the source of all suffering. Now, the Buddhist ethics is first stage put forth as the four noble truths that Buddha realized, which are profound by themselves, although they may appear simple by itself at the first glance. Now, what is the second thing that second noble truth that Buddha talks about is the doctrine of dependent origination, or which is known as pratitya samutpadvad. Now, what does this mean? It means, well, it is the doctrine of dependent origination. That, well, what it simply means is that suffering is not an accident. It is caused. So, suffering has a cause. Now, contrast Buddhism as a reaction to Hinduism of that time, which greatly perhaps propagated theory of fatalism, or that many of the incidents in life were a part of one's desert and therefore unalterable. Now, Buddha makes a change over here. He regards suffering as an event which is caused. So, there is a cause to suffering, and if the cause is removed, suffering is removed. So, the second noble truth is breaking down in 4 sequences. Now, the 4 noble truths break down in sequence the understanding of dukkha and its elimination. So, suffering is not an accident, it is rather caused. So, what is this suffering about? Well, suffering is not as a result of chance. Now, coming to what exactly are these, what is suffering? So, we say that, well, there are the Buddhists claim that there are 12 links of suffering. And what are these links? Well, let me first put them down for you to go through, and then we will talk about in detail. Ignorance or avidya, karmic impressions or sanskar, initial embryonic consciousness or vijnana. Embryonic psychophysical organism. Or nama rupa, 6 sense organs, mind included. Shadayatana. And then there is sense object contact or sparsha. There is sense experience. Or vedana. Have thirst for sense objects. Trishna. then we have clinging, which is upadana. Then we have will to be born or bhava. Birth or rebirth is known as jati, and finally we have suffering, sickness, old age and death. It is jara maran. Okay. Now, these are 12 classifications that you would perhaps find in any of the textbook dealing with Buddhist ethics. What is it trying to point out? It is called the 12 links, a part of the second noble truth in a part of diagnosis. That means first it makes a claim that well suffering or suffering is a part of existence, and because existence has this necessary nature of impermanence, and therefore suffering is a part of existence, and therefore impermanence is a part of existence, and therefore impermanence causes suffering. So, suffering is inevitably tied up with existence, and if this suffering or this impermanence is caused, it is not an accidental or unnatural import. There is a cause for it, there is a reason why it is there, and the reason is analyzed into these 12 links that well which is what we have seen here. That well, if you look at it now, the first two are to do with past life. So, ignorance and avidya and sanskar, these are part of our past life, and they come from our past life. What we do, we are born because we have initial embryonic consciousness. Now, this is also putting forth the metaphysical claims of Buddhism, that well, we have initial embryonic consciousness, and therefore we are born, we have this nama rupa, or then we become a psychophysical organism. And the part of the psychophysical organism, we have 6 sense organs, which is the Sharyatna, and these sense organs have contact with objects out there, and the moment we have this sense object contact, this sparsh, we have sense experience or Vedana. Now, this Vedana is what calls which causes thirst for sense objects or Trishna, and this Trishna causes us to be cling to this these sense objects, and this clinging causes our will to be born, and this causes again our birth, and then we have suffering, sickness, old age and death. So, this adheres to future life, and this adheres to present life. So, what in essence is the claim, if we look at it as a whole, is that well, we are born, and born because we have that fundamental embryonic consciousness, and then because of that we feel ourselves as a psychophysical organism. We have sense organs, the sense organs get in touch with the world out there, and that causes experience, sense experience. That sense experience breeds desire, and desire and attachment, and this attachment causes us to be reborn, and this again puts us through a cycle of birth, death, birth, decay, disease, suffering and death. So, liberation from this is our is a the way to get away from this cycle of dependent origination. Now, this 12-fold chain of causation is often referred to as dharma chakra or the wheel of becoming, it is referred to as Bhava Chakra or Dwadash Nidana. So, this is the nature of suffering. Now, let us come to the third noble truth.